when silence, not service, became the ultimate experience. Nothing was said, no welcome speech, no explanations, and somehow that absence spoke louder than anything else. This story matters now because modern hospitality has become increasingly performative. Smiles are scripted, interactions are optimized. Yet one restaurant proved that removing noise could deepen connection. To understand how silence became the most powerful form of service, we need to return to a dining room that dared to step back. Because today, the same overstimulation defines how we experience everything. For years, great service meant visibility, attentive staff, constant check-ins, elaborate descriptions. The guest was guided, reassured, and managed at every step. Comfort came from being directed. Then a restaurant quietly rejected that formula. Guests were seated without ceremony. Menus arrived without commentary. Courses appeared without explanation. Staff moved efficiently, almost invisibly. At first, the silence felt awkward. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others whispered, unsure of expectations. Without guidance, people had to decide how to behave, when to speak, when to pause. The experience offered no cues. Inside the kitchen, this approach was intentional. The goal was not minimalism for its own sake. It was respect. Respect for the guest's attention. Respect for the food's ability to communicate. Respect for moments that did not need interruption. The dining room began to slow. Conversations softened. People noticed the rhythm of service instead of its performance. Plates arrived at precise moments. Glasses were refilled without announcement. Needs were anticipated, not advertised. Not everyone appreciated the change. Some mistook silence for indifference. Others felt unmoored without affirmation. Reviews questioned warmth. But a different reaction emerged alongside discomfort. Guests stayed longer. They spoke less. They remembered more. Because when service disappears, experience takes center stage. And that shift would soon challenge everything hospitality believed it needed to be. As the restaurant's reputation grew, silence became its most debated feature. Some praised it as thoughtful, others labeled it cold. The absence of commentary forced guests to confront their own expectations about care and attention. Staff training changed entirely. Instead of scripts, they practiced observation. Instead of rehearsed warmth, they learned timing. A glance replaced a question. A pause replaced interruption. Service became less about presence, more about awareness. This demanded intense discipline. Silence leaves no room for mistakes. A delayed plate felt louder. A missed cue felt heavier. Without conversation to soften errors, precision became essential. Guests responded differently. Some leaned into the calm, finding relief in not being managed. Others resisted, craving reassurance. The dining room became a mirror, reflecting each person's relationship with control and comfort. Industry peers watched closely. Many misunderstood the concept, copying the quiet without the care. Silence without intention felt empty. This restaurant's approach worked only because it was supported by rigor behind the scenes. Behind the calm, effort doubled. Staff memorized patterns. Kitchens synchronized perfectly. Every movement mattered. Silence was not absence of work. It was a result of it. Then came a moment that clarified everything. A guest asked why no one explained the food. The server answered simply, "So you can listen to yourself." That sentence spread faster than any review. It reframed silence as invitation, not neglect. And with that understanding, the restaurant stepped into a new phase of influence. With influence came pressure. Silence, once a choice, now felt like a promise. Guests arrived expecting transcendence. The quiet had to deliver something profound or risk feeling empty. The restaurant faced a fragile balance. Too much restraint could feel distant. Too much warmth could break the spell. Every interaction carried weight. Every movement mattered more than words ever could. Inside the team, fatigue surfaced. Sustaining silence required constant attention. No autopilot. No scripts to fall back on. Presence had to be renewed every night. The emotional labor was invisible, but intense. Criticism returned in waves. Some accused the restaurant of elitism. Others said it demanded too much from guests. The idea of silence challenged comfort zones, and not everyone welcomed that challenge. The temptation to adjust was real. Add brief explanations. Offer more verbal reassurance. Ease attention. But each potential change threatened the core idea. Silence only worked if it was trusted completely. So the restaurant refined instead of added. Timing became sharper. Transition smoother. Hospitality expressed itself through precision, not speech. Warmth lived in consistency. Gradually, the narrative shifted. Guests began describing the experience as calming, even therapeutic. They spoke of time slowing, of meals feeling longer, richer, more personal. The dining room became a rare space where nothing demanded attention. No sales, no commentary, no urgency, just presence. In a world saturated with noise, that absence became a luxury. And in preserving it, the restaurant reached the emotional peak of an experiment. The emotional peak arrived not through revelation, but through relief. Guests realized they did not need to perform. They did not need to respond, react, or validate anything. They could simply be present. That realization changed the relationship between guest and host. Trust replaced guidance. The restaurant no longer led the experience. It held space for it. Silence became a shared agreement, not an imposed rule. Over time, the impact reached beyond dining. Visitors carried the feeling with them. Meetings felt louder. Screens felt harsher. Conversations felt rushed. The restaurant had recalibrated their sense of attention. The team understood the responsibility that came with that influence. Silence could not be careless. It had to remain generous. Every detail had to earn its quiet. Every service had to justify the absence of explanation. Years later, the restaurant would be remembered less for its menu and more for how it made people feel afterward. Grounded, rested, seen without being addressed. In a culture driven by constant interaction, this place proved something unexpected. Sometimes the deepest form of service is restraint. Sometimes the most meaningful gesture is stepping back. Silence did not remove hospitality. It revealed it, what the restaurant had discovered. Underneath all the discipline and refinement was a truth about human attention that the hospitality industry had been working against for decades. Attention does not expand in response to stimulation. It deepens in response to space. When every moment is filled, when every pause is preempted, when every question is answered before it can fully form, guests are left with the experience of being managed rather than the experience of being present. The restaurant had removed the management and discovered that presence, when allowed to exist without interruption, has its own intelligence. Guests noticed things they had never noticed before. The texture of porcelain, the temperature of a room, the way one flavor receded to let another surface. These were not new experiences. They were old experiences, finally allowed to arrive. The lesson for service of all kinds was embedded in that discovery. Silence is not the absence of care. It is a specific form of care, one that trusts the other person enough to let them have their own experience rather than the experience you have designed for them. That trust is harder to sustain than any script. It requires more confidence, more preparation, and more willingness to sit with uncertainty. But it produces something that no amount of rehearsed warmth can replicate. A genuine encounter between the thing offered and the person receiving it. Unmediated, unhurried, unrepeatable. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? The industry eventually caught up with the idea, though it did so imperfectly. Silence became a trend before it could become a principle. Restaurants stripped away commentary without stripping away ego. Minimalism was adopted as aesthetic rather than as ethic. The results were predictably hollow. A quiet room is not the same as a generous one. Restraint without intention produces distance, not depth. What distinguished the original approach was the understanding that silence had to be earned by everything surrounding it. The ingredients had to be worth the attention they were given. The preparation had to honor what silence would expose. The staff had to care more, not less, for the absence of their voice. When all of that was in place, silence became the most articulate thing in the room. It said, "We trust what we have made. We trust you to receive it. We trust this moment to be enough." That confidence, expressed through quietness, turned out to be the rarest form of hospitality because it was not about the restaurant at all. When